Hello and welcome to another 10-ton potato for all you potato lovers and potato haters. Today we are joined with my co-host Craig Tarr. We're the founders of GTconsult. GTconsult. I'm sure we can fix that in post. Never mind, this is live. Okay, I've just been told this is live. Cannot confix GTconsult. So that's how we'll be referred to from now on. So today we're going to be talking about Loop and why Microsoft have created it, what is it replacing, and what can it do. So right now you can go to www.microsoft.com and you can search for Loop, or you can go to Google and search for Loop. You can go to Bing, search for Loop, or you can open up many of your emails and click on the Loop link because we're inundated with Loop, and you will get Loop. And Loop looks suspiciously familiar to something that's currently out there. Craig, what do you think it looks familiar
Firstly,
to?
I want to say that I'm so excited for today because it's Valentine's Day, and what better love than co-creating and collaborating with your teammates. With that being said, it looks very familiar to Notion, which, granted, I drink the Microsoft Kool-Aid, so I've never been onto Notion before last week when you mentioned it, and having played with it, very, very similar types of tools.
Exactly. That's what my initial thought was. So the first time I tried out Loop was this time last year at the Microsoft 365 conference. And what I immediately thought was it's OneNote version 2.0. And it has pretty much the same usability as OneNote. But then they've thrown in a bunch of additional functions and it looks really similar to Notion. And I didn't use it again because we already adopted OneNote. And I feel like the move to Notion won't happen because we're Microsoft House. And the move to Loop won't happen because we've already put everything in OneNote. So until there's a migration tool that moves everything from OneNote to Loop, I'm not quite sure we would make the change.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and I think today we need to answer that question. So firstly, is it a replacement for OneNote? And secondly, how does it stack up against Notion? Because, you want to be using the best tool, right? So even if it's not in the Microsoft stack, maybe it has the best features that for you as an organization you want to use. But let's remember that every time you create a team, you create a SharePoint site, what does it create with? A OneNote. So it kind of keeps everything together there for you. So they're most certainly going to have to come up with a plan if that is the idea, to move everything to Loop, how to migrate everything.
Or they'll just leave it to us to figure out. The big thing for me is if you look at the Microsoft history of either purchasing other companies or recreating software that is similar to keep everyone on the Microsoft 365 platform. If you look back, Link was the instant messaging platform. They bought Skype, moved everything over to Skype for Business, and then they looked at Slack and then said, wait, that's perfect, we'll buy that. Slack said, nope, we're good. And so then Microsoft said, all right, we'll make our own. And they made Teams. And now Teams is definitely competing with the Slack space, keeping everyone on the Office 365 platform. Do you think they're doing the same thing here with Loop, looking at Notion, have OneNote, but now we've just taken it up another notch?
Without a doubt. I mean, that's Microsoft's go-to, right? Look at Yammer. Same story, except that Yammer took the bait there and moved across to Microsoft, which, well, we're still Yammer certified, even though there's no Yammer around anymore. It's now Viva Engage. So, I think it is that. I think you're right on the money there. That Microsoft is looking to generate or maintain people on their Microsoft 365 environment by keeping them engaged with these new workloads. And I think Microsoft Loop is just one of those that they've they've kind of stolen from Notion. You can tell it from the design. Everything is nearly identical, and we can have a look at that. We've got examples of both of them up.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best thing to do. So let's have a look at Notion versus Loop. Probably should have been the title of this video.
Okay, so let me share my screen here, and I'll take you through both, but I'll also be talking towards OneNote as the replacement. So I thought it best to start off on the getting started that comes along with Loop. So I'm in Loop here. You'll notice that it's at loop.cloud.microsoft.com. Basically, a standalone site where you can start creating your loops. So the one interesting thing here is obviously there's no tie-in to your 365 at this point, because you can log in here. Yes, you log in with your Microsoft 365 credentials, but it's a standalone tool. Now, the premise is that you can create functional pages, including components on those pages like videos, which, that's pretty much what OneNote does, right? So if you want to create a new page, you come along, hit on the new page, put in your title. So far, very much like OneNote. So new example. And then you can start just typing away. Now, that's great for taking notes, but the first thing when you get into OneNote is you want to create lists, you want to create tasks and all of the rest. So if you click on the /, that then gives you the ability to add tables, checklists, bullet lists, dates, callouts, even code, through to table of contents, dividers. And then we've got all sorts of things in here like templates, like Kanban boards, voting tables, task lists. Now, suddenly, it's not so much like OneNote, because up until the point where we were adding in just text, that's very much OneNote. Now we're getting to the point of actually adding in templates. So if I wanted to add in a Kanban board for tasks, I hit on the Kanban board and boom, there we go. I've got all my tasks. I can go and create a new task for Brad. Select a date for that and put in Brad there.
But how does it know?
Okay, so
it must
that
be
is now
connected to
connecting you to Office
somehow then.
365. So it's connecting that actual task to Brad, right? So that,
And if you save that, does that go to my Microsoft to do? So
well,
is it
let's
connected to
actually have a
Exchange?
look at that. So task for Craig in Loop. Okay, so we've added that in. We'll talk about that when we get to kind of the integrations, because I'll go through Teams and how it fits in and all of the rest. So that's the basics of creating the pages. So in terms of having an additional layer like a OneNote version 2, most certainly there's all sorts that is created in here. And I think one of the problems that we always sat with in OneNote was the generation of templates. It was always very clunky. So here, if we add in a new page, you can actually go to a template gallery where it's got all sorts of things like create a project brief. And this will show you what that project brief template looks like. So quite a lot of data in there. Obviously, you can then go and fill in your tables and the rest. But if we go to something like project planning, similar type of information, but breaking up into the different sections. Now, being a techie, what I straight away looked at was, the tech spec, because that for me, place for the your staff to go in, create the requirements around a project, where it breaks up all of the required fields that you need. You can even put in sample code, which is quite a nice little widget over here, and putting in different types of sample code that you might want, as well as just capturing all of the table data that you might need, etc. So these components.
So this is the same type of templates that Notion use.
Okay, so yes, most certainly. But I'll jump across to Notion now. So in terms of that template, capturing all of the data, very cool. You can go and edit it. You can edit this the sample code. If I've got a table, I can go and add in new lines to that table quite easily. I can add in any of my content. So very simplistic to use, and nice kind of layout, but still relatively basic. What we still don't have here is the ability to save whatever we've changed as a template. We can duplicate a page, which is great. You can create one
Yeah.
as a template and then duplicate it. But obviously, what would be nice is if I create a tech spec that is designed specifically for GT, and then I wanted to go and use that in another workspace, well, that functionality is not available here. I have to duplicate and then go and add this to a workspace, which is a little bit clunky, but maybe they'll come up with a solution for that. Quite importantly, there's share this loop component.
Mhm.
Now, that gives you the ability to actually copy that component and paste it somewhere. And that somewhere, obviously, you can put it in Teams, you can put it in an Outlook email, anywhere really. It embeds the component in any of your Microsoft tools. So that is quite a nice piece of functionality. I'll show you that when we get to.
Will it work in
Sorry, will it work in? Most
SharePoint?
certainly, yeah. So you can embed this in a SharePoint site as well. Okay, so that is really Loop. Let's jump across to Notion. And I also started on their stock standard getting started so we can get an idea. The one difference that we had with getting started with a workspace.
Are you in Notion now or Loop? It looks so
Exactly. I'm
similar.
in
I'm not
Notion
sure.
now.
Can't tell.
Very similar. You've got your team
Yeah.
spaces, you've got any of your getting started pages, you've got a calendar, you've got all of your templates. You can import information into Notion. So a lot more just base functionality here. The other difference was when I set up the Notion workspace, it didn't just set up a blank workspace for me like Loop does. It asked me what my preferences were, what industry I worked in, what type of workspace. So I put in project management. So it has created sections for me specific to project management. So I've got projects, I've got wikis, I've got meetings, I've got docs, etc. Now, if we wanted to add in a new blank page here, very similar type of functionality. Put in your title, start typing with AI, import some information, or add in a template. So very similar to what we saw. But let's go and have a look at their templates. So within their templates, I can now look at things like project tasks. Also, very similar tabular type views. I've got project tasks and sprints. So this is now getting a lot more complex within the actual template where, yes, it's a Kanban, but look at the sprint planning, the backlogs. There's a whole lot more functionality here than just a Kanban board or a table. So in terms of the information that we are trying to pull together, some of them pretty much the same, like product spec versus the tech spec, very similar types of pages. But where we're looking at things like projects and tasks, this becomes quite a lot more complex. So let me go and add that in.
So this is quite interesting because Microsoft have put themselves in a little bit of a predicament. Notion is obviously quite advanced, been around for a while, have got a whole ecosystem. People can sell and buy templates, but it starts to encroach on other Microsoft products like project management, for instance,
Yep.
right? And so the further this goes down the line, the other products in the Microsoft stack are going to be basically cannibalized if Loop starts to go down this route as well.
Yeah, so I mean, most certainly, there's a whole lot here that you would have seen around document management, wikis, meetings. I mean, this talks to absolutely everything in your Microsoft 365 stack.
So when you look at document management, then you're like starting to encroach into
Correct.
SharePoint territory. You know what I mean? So this is it's quite a big deal when we think why Loop has come along and what Loop is actually going to take on. Is it going to take Notion on head on? Because if someone buys Notion and they go, "What I can put everything in here. I can do project management. I can do document management. I can do wikis. I can create apps and templates." That leaves Microsoft in a very precarious position going, "Oh, you can do that with this app, and that's how much that costs. You can do that with this app, and that's how much that costs." And Notion are like, "Hold on a second, it's one license. Here you go.
Yeah,
Go for it."
I think most of your stack that you're getting with Microsoft 365 is all in one. So that's total cost of ownership with the things that we're looking at. I'm not talking about things like Project Server, which is its own license, and that takes this to that's far more complicated than this in terms of resource management and the like. So those are different types of tools.
Yeah, because people always look at complication in terms of what
Yeah,
they want to buy, right? If a project manager looks at this and goes, "I can use this and it's easier," why would they not switch?
yeah, it's a great question, and the ease of which you can adjust things here. So, as an example, you come in, you want to create your tasks. Well, if I want to add in a new property, I just add one in. Yes, on the Microsoft on Loop, you've got a table. You can add in a column in the table. But here, I can actually create templates of different types of tasks, different types of projects. I created a vendor management page just to check it out and adding in new vendors and the likes here. And whoops, sorry, still getting used to this interface. I can actually go and create new types of vendors. So just depending on the information. So the customization, very easy. Yes, can you do all the same in SharePoint lists? Most certainly you can. But yeah, it is a nice interface pulling this all together.
But does Notion integrate into email to provide alerts? Does it have workflow functionality where you can kick off a workflow based on actionable events? Or is it everything you see is what you
So
get? Just a really
once
good
again, we've got the
WYSIWYG.
copy link, so I'll show you that in Teams. But you do have the ability to create automations. So I haven't gone into that to be honest, but you can see it's pretty basic, like add a trigger, add an action. Now, if that works for you, great. If you've seen most of our clients working with their workflows in Power Automate, you need a lot more than just create a trigger and an action. You really need to start building out some complex workflows. And I think there, it definitely Microsoft 365 takes first prize. Similarly, if you're building interfaces, the limitations around the interfaces here are very much like a Microsoft list. So it's not like having the ability to create a power app with your own custom interfaces and then having workflow behind it. So much greater usability from the Microsoft side there than in Notion.
So essentially, what this is for then smaller businesses and not
I would say
enterprise
so.
businesses. So you're still going to leave your Office 365 stack for your enterprise business because you have that granular dev and functionality available to you. Whereas this is, small business, one man band to, uh, 50 people, and you can work in it in this space. And then as soon as you get to a certain level, you're going to start finding that it doesn't give you enough.
Yeah, I mean that is my kind of feeling on this. I haven't had a look at the additional apps that are available for Notion, and I know there are a lot of them, and some of those might handle some of those more enterprise cases. But for me, This is around specifics for a project, as an example. Would you manage your team interactions in here, as in a departmental interaction where you're storing documents and collaborating around documents, etc.? I don't think so. For me, there you would still want something like Microsoft Teams to be able to hold all of that information together. Talking Microsoft Teams, let's go and have a look at some of the functionality though. So I'm going to open up Teams here into one of our example areas, and I copied that. I copied the information from Notion. Oops, clearly I didn't copy it. Let me come in here and copy the link to this information. Okay, so let's just start with the loop one, seeing as it's already loaded. What you can see here is I've copied the loop component, and it automatically links to that loop page without me having to set anything up. So it automatically embeds any of the data directly within Teams. Now, it does the same if you are in Outlook or any of your Microsoft tools for that matter. The nice thing here is that this page is still the master of the data. So any amendments to that page will show up when you look at this loop. So it's not a static piece of information. If you are changing your tables or assigning things to people, that is automatically shown within that loop. So that's the loop component.
So you can interact with it within the chat
Oh, most
component of
certainly.
Teams.
So any of my interactions here will show up in loop. So if I go through and let's just add in another solution for Brad.
I mean, you pin that chat and then you aim for away. That's quite cool.
Okay, so that's actually going to be doing in-time updates. Now let's go and have a look at the Notion one. So Notion copy. Of course, it's a link. So that kind of interaction with Teams is absolutely awesome. And let's just jump out of there. Let's open up our information, and you can see like all of that tying in. So that kind of tie-in with your Microsoft tool, I think, is absolutely awesome. The other thing that I wanted to show you is my email. So remember, we assigned a task to Craig Tarr in Loop, and I'm sure you got one of these as well, where it mentions what you've been assigned, and here is your task in the Kanban board directly in the email. And that's without any kind of setup. That just, Loop has taken a copy of what you were assigned, taken that page, and then shown it to you within the email. So very cool kind of functionality there.
And then you can, yeah. So that's what I was checking on my phone now, and what I find awesome with that is, look, I mean, from on a device, you just get please go to this page. You can't, but on a desktop, I think you can. If you're in Outlook, it does give you the access to it. So you can actually work in Outlook from that. So you don't even have to click the link.
Correct.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
I really like
But
that.
coming back to your question, does it pull through on your to-do lists? Well, no, it doesn't. So there seems to be a lack of tie-in between things that you're doing in your loop versus other items that are already in Teams. Now, what also interests me is if you click on new apps here and you type in loop, there's no Microsoft loop. So it's quite interesting that...
I think that's on purpose. I honestly do. I think that they, with all the Copilot changes and with everything changing, I think they're working on the back end to get this to be a OneNote replacement. They're working on a migration tool. They're working on a few things to take this to the next level. And they're only going to do it once the Copilot's hype starts to calm down.
Yeah, which I mean, it will make sense, especially if you can tie a loop to a team or to a interest area, whatever it might be, that you can add it in as a tab where you can see all of the loop functionality. Right now, what you have to do is jump across to loop, copy the hyperlink, and then add that in as a web page within the team, which doesn't feel great to me. So yeah, it's just an interesting thing,
Yeah.
and I think you might be completely right there.
But yeah, I think definitely Loop is going to be the future. I think once they figure out a way to migrate OneNote to Loop, and then they'll start to tie it into everything. And I think it will be that tool. I think they just have to figure out, will it take over a number of different areas? So will they tie in the document management side to a SharePoint site and then tie that up all nicely in a little ribbon, along with the project management? Will they pull in Microsoft project? And will they integrate Flow and Logic apps and those types of use case scenarios for automations? I think that there's quite a lot to uncover and go through, but I mean, it seems logical that that's the way
Yeah.
to go.
The one thing is obviously Notion is so far ahead with that. It's going to be a catch up game, but Microsoft are good at that. So yeah, there's
One of the richest companies in the world with unlimited resources versus Notion. I don't think they'll be
yeah.
too far behind for too long. But yeah, thank you so much for introducing us to Loop, doing the Notion comparison. A lot to talk about, a lot to look forward to, and certainly something we need to keep our eye on.
Yeah, I think just to kind of round it up, there were a couple of things that I looked at, so that I want to bring up. Obviously, when it comes to licensing, I think quite important. So Notion, you've got a freemium license up to 10 guests, 7-day page history, 70 plus interactions, integrations. Um, if you move up, so if you're up to 100 guests, then you $8 per member per month. If that's
So
billed
eight
annually.
hundred.
Otherwise, it's $10 billed monthly. And then business is
Mm.
up to 250, which is $15 per member. And then enterprise is where you 250 upwards, and that's $20. But then it brings in things like SSO, advanced security, user provisioning, and the others just have increased days of history where you can store any of that information, private team spaces, etc. So that's quite interesting. Obviously, loop free with your Microsoft 365 license, but you need a Microsoft 365 license there. Obviously, the functions in depth, orientated towards all business units in Notion, whereas Loop is a little bit more simplistic. They've both actually got mobile apps, which is quite cool. So you can get any of your notifications on your mobile app as well. So very similar type of experience there. But that copy of those components into your other workday tools like Outlook, Teams, etc. That for me is a complete win in terms of Loop, whereas Notion, you'd need to embed a page or add a page to your team as well if you're going to be using Teams. So just an interesting bit of pros and cons there for both of them.
I think uh, I think it's definitely something that's going to increase and get better over time. Um, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to unpack there. So I'd like to see what updates they do, what integrations they do, and what future announcements are going to be, and see where that goes. Yeah, who's the Microsoft um, director of Loop. So Cashman is OneDrive. Cheaper is SharePoint. Who's
I don't
the
know.
Loop
I'll have to find out.
guy? Yeah, I think we definitely have to follow him and or her, and see what the announcements are around it, because I definitely think this is going to be a big player in the game in the
Yeah.
coming years.
Cool. Well, thank you. I'm feeling the love now to go and collaborate.
Yeah, go collaborate. Loop me in.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Craig. Have a great day. Thanks for the update, and we'll catch everyone
Thanks
next
all.
week.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Cheers.